It's pretty clear, if you look at the evidence, that about 90% of cardiovascular disease is absolutely preventable, and actually preventable in quite trivial ways. Because all you have to do is go back 100 years or so, and you find a population in England that had a similar life expectancy to our own, with the provision that they were measuring life expectancy from age 5. And the records of the time, compiled by doctors who were remarkably good pathological anatomists, show plain as a pikestaff. They knew about heart attacks, they knew about cardiovascular disease, knew exactly what it was, but it was rare, occurring at less than 10% of the levels that we see today. So at that time, people were extraordinarily effectively protected against coronary artery, cardiovascular, cerebrovascular disease, whereas we are not. Why? Because they were better nourished. They did a lot of the right things and they didn't do many of the wrong things that we do today. And it's interesting, this figure of 10%, because if you talk to the cardiologists and say, how many of your patients got into problems because they had bad genes, they'll say, oh, about 10%. In the Victorian era, it's only that 10%. Only if you had spectacularly awful genes that you actually ended up in trouble. Everyone else was protected by the diet. The Victorian data shows us unequivocally that 90%, more than 90%, of all heart disease is absolutely avoidable. Not using drugs, but simply through lifestyle modifications.
What are those lifestyle modifications that Dr. Clayton was mentioning? Well, first we need to understand that what is called chronic subclinical inflammation is now seen in the medical press as the underlying cause of heart disease, and indeed of many other age-related diseases. Now, chronic basically means long-term, subclinical means not noticeable, which of course makes it dangerous. That's confirmed by a number of authorities. Low-grade inflammation is associated with everything from heart disease and diabetes to Alzheimer's and arthritis, and may even be the cause of most chronic diseases. And a Scientific American confirms inflammation is an underlying contributor to virtually every chronic disease: rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, diabetes, and depression, along with the major killers such as heart disease and stroke. And indeed now the connection between this type of inflammation and cancer is now center stage in the research arena. As Dr. Clayton himself says, if chronic inflammation is allowed to run unchecked, tissues become dysfunctional and then fail, which is essentially the definition of disease and indeed aging. And unfortunately, if you're 50 and over, you will have accumulated this type of inflammation. So the lifestyle that he talks about would have to include foods that are high in anti-inflammatory nutrients, which is why Dr. Clayton has produced a cookbook which features this type of anti-inflammatory ingredients. Dr. Clayton has also designed a supplement which combines rich levels of vitamins and minerals with anti-inflammatory and indeed antioxidant nutrients. These anti-inflammatory nutrients include flavonoids from green tea, grapeseed extract and curcumin, some soy isoflavones, omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil, carotenoids like lutein and lycopene, and much more, an all-round comprehensive protection. It combines essentially the lessons from the very latest medical research with the nutrients identified in the diets of the healthiest societies. And that's why this cookbook is free with the first purchase of NutriShield. We invite you to investigate more at NutriShield.com.